Collin Hughes. In June 10th of 2022, he gets a call that changes his life forever. He has a video of it. His granddaughter commits suicide. And moments later, he decides to video his reaction. And it's, you can imagine, it's quite breathtaking. But what does he do? He turns it around and he has a podcast. He has a website. Actually, has two websites. He goes on podcasts and talks about helping people who deal with suicide. The numbers are staggering as to how many people contemplate it in age groups. He himself, Collin, his goal in life was to be a cowboy, pilot, and an actor. So he rode rodeo for a long time. He was a professional rodeo rider. He has my favorite story that he tells that I asked him to share was somebody named Bobby Brown and what happened with him. Great, wonderful story. You see, Collin also had a daughter that died from cancer. And he talks about the difference between his granddaughter dying by suicide and his daughter dying by cancer and how different they were. He was also a commercial pilot, and then now he does voiceover acting. But he publicly speaks. It's an uplifting conversation about suicide. I was excited when he accepted this. He's an inspirational man, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for listening. Hi. I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. I think it's good we start with a little laughter. Collin, absolute pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. So how do you stop a stealthy predator that no one sees coming?
That's a tough question. I wish I knew the answer. I really do. You're taking that from my website. How do you stop a stealthy predator that no one sees coming? Well, I certainly couldn't stop it from my granddaughter. That predator just came out and took her. And looking back, the only thing I can think of is to educate people, to not just people who are in need of, not just the people who are having suicidal thoughts, but people around them, educating people to look for the signs, and how to interact with somebody. I actually came across a online institution. It's a QPR institution that helps people. They call it a gatekeeper class that helps them ask the correct questions and how to talk to somebody. QPR is question, persuade, refer. So you question people, and there's right ways to do it. So if your listeners haven't caught on by now, that stealthy predator is suicide. And there's ways to ask somebody and ways not to ask somebody. Like ways not to are, hey, you're not thinking about doing this, are you? It just come right out point blank. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about not waking up in the morning? Have you ever had those thoughts? You just didn't want to wake up in the morning? Anything that could relate to where, they could have suicidal thoughts. And what the instructors on this course said is that 100% of the time, if you ask the person straight out, they're going to answer.
Hmm.
So you question and then persuade. And the only way to do that is to listen to them. Don't just, oh man, you shouldn't do that. Just listen to them. Because there's one thing that everybody who has ever attempted suicide, who has failed suicide, or who had suicidal thoughts, or those who have actually accomplished it, there's one thing that they all have in common. And that is, for some reason, they feel that there is no hope left for them. They don't believe that hope or love exist in the world anymore, or at least in their world. And so if there's no hope for tomorrow or no hope for the next minute even, I think, why should I go on? There's nothing left to live for. And you have to be able to persuade them that that's not true by talking to them. And a big part of talking is listening to let them know that they truly are loved. And then to persuade, help them find help. And it's not just to, hey, why don't you call this doctor over here or that or whatever. It's, if you need to, make the appointment with them, take them to the appointment, whatever you can do.
Mm.
And you've got to be persistent. You can't give up. You can't let them talk you out of, oh, just leave me alone. No, you've got to be there for them. And that's the biggest thing I can think of.
You have a video, Collin, where, on that dreadful morning, June of 2022, where it would seem to me minutes after hearing the news, you give your true feelings to the world in a video. What made you do that? It's incredibly courageous.
Well, that goes back to a lot of time throughout my life, actually. I, I had three dreams as a child: be a cowboy, be a pilot, be an actor. I rode bulls for 18 years, competed in Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association against some of the biggest names in the sport of professional rodeo. I'm a retired airline pilot. And after I stopped riding bulls, I started to announce rodeos. And I thought, hey, I'm pretty good at being behind the microphone. Most people, they don't want to do any public speaking. It terrifies them. Me, you put me in a stadium with thousands of people and put a microphone in front of me, I'm like, we're going to have some fun. But I knew that my gift that I had was meant for something far greater than announcing rodeos or stand-up comedy that I had done. It had to be for more, because when I was a child, I was saved from drowning. I was within seconds of taking my last breath. Another time, as a young man in my early 20s, I came within inches of being hit by a car going about 70 miles an hour. And I always thought, after I found my love of public speaking, I always wondered, why have I been saved? And on June 10th of last year, that phone call came. It was my daughter's caller ID. And so I picked it up like, oh, hi, honey, how you doing? And it was her husband, my granddaughter's stepfather. And I knew something was wrong, but had no idea what. And he told me of the news. And I'm just like you see in that video that I did of myself shortly after. That's nothing compared to what I did when I was on the phone getting the news. But even through all that pain, all that emotion and screaming and wailing, within seconds, the thought, and I tried to find a topic that I could be a public speaker on. And each time it was like, no, I can't do that. No, that doesn't fit. I'm not qualified. And I just never could find anything that I could be passionate in speaking about. And seconds after getting the news while I'm still on the phone,
Mm.
the thought just came into my head just clear as day. This is what you're supposed to do. And after I got off the phone, I just started thinking, how can I approach this? How can I share with people that, this is the pain that they're going to leave behind if anybody ever does this. And I was hoping that when I came into I'm a voice actor now, and I thought, if I came into my booth and I just put out their pure, raw emotion, pleading with people not to do this because this is the pain that they're going to leave behind. I was hoping that if I could just influence one person by this video to not do it, to realizing that that would be their parents, their siblings, their spouse, their grandparents, or whoever it is that they'd be leaving behind. That's the pain that their family and loved ones are going to feel.
Mhm.
And that perhaps that could persuade somebody to have second thoughts, say, you know what? I can't do that to them. And thus the video.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I remember hearing a statistic how I don't know how they draw this, but most people that were considering it that withdraw from it usually regret the thought of doing it. And usually people that do it don't really want to. Is it a type of mental illness? Do we know? I know you're not a medical professional. You make that clear. But what have you gleaned?
I have a friend who's a therapist, is from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she was saying that she had heard from somebody that she knew that had attempted suicide, but did not accomplish that lived through it. And that this person had said that once she got into that mindset, that it wasn't her. It was like somebody else taking over.
Wow.
And that she couldn't even remember what had happened. Just
Hmm.
like somebody else took over. And that's that stealthy predator.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you mentioned before a cowboy, a pilot, and an actor. It sounds like the script of a great movie, and you've you've wrestled with you've had you say outright that you weren't the best person you could have been in the past, and there was some troubles in your home, and you ran away and you came back, and you make some great statements about who you were and how better you are now and what the things you wrestled with. But you yourself, when you had these down times, you turned to people. Did they help? How did you turn yourself around?
Well, the one thing that's been the constant guiding path in my life was faith in God.
Mm.
My wife and I are both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that has been such. When I was younger, I was following in my father's footsteps of drinking and womanizing and all this, and I firmly believe if I would not have found the church and started to become better, that I would be either dead or in an alley somewhere with a bottle in my hand or a needle in my arm. And I am so grateful that I never did that. There was one point though that I considered ending my own life. And this was after, I joined the church, and I was just going I was just going through something really depressing in my life. And I thought, I just felt no hope. There's no hope. Nobody loves me, blah, 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 blah. And so I It was back in those days, there was this marvelous piece of technology that you could go up to and you could put a quarter in it and dial a number. It's called a payphone.
Right.
It was an incredible piece of technology.
Superman changed his clothes in those things, didn't he?
But then it advanced even beyond that
Really?
into one that you could drive up to
Mm.
and talk to somebody from the privacy of your own automobile. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found one of these drive up payphones and I called a local church leader and I just had one question for him. And that was, after I do this, what's going to happen to my soul?
Mm.
And I had it all planned out that, that he couldn't track where I was at or anything because I knew that, he'd try to stop me. And he he wouldn't answer the question. He just says, I can't stop you because I don't know how to get to you, but hear me out first. He says, just give me 5, 10, 15 minutes. Can you do that for me? Oh boy, here we go. He's gonna talk me out of it. I wasn't wanting to hear it, but I said, well, okay. I called the guy because I needed my answer. What's going to happen to my soul? I had to have that answer. And he just says, you know, people love you. People do care about you. Did you know that? He says, well, just the other day I was talking to brother so and so, and he says, and he was telling me that how you brightened up his day by saying something, or sister so and so, just brother Hughes is just so amazing, isn't he? And all these other people, he says, you are loved. You truly are loved. And he kept on going, talking about love in my life and God loving me.
Mm.
And here I am. So I never did get my answer, but I didn't need it anymore, I guess.
Well, we're all glad what happened there. Can it be hereditary? Did your parents, grandparents ever have suicidal tendencies?
I was
Silent?
adopted, so I'm not sure, but
Ah,
there's a gentleman who's had some TEDx talks who has been on my podcast, the Miracles of Tragedy, and his name is Frank. I'd have to look it up, his last name, but he calls himself the mental health comedian.
I know Frank. I've had him on the
Okay,
podcast as well. Yeah.
yeah, and Frank talks about that there is, and it's not very well known that suicidal ideation can be hereditary.
Right.
I'd never thought about it before that, so I don't know. According to Frank, yes, it is.
And I don't want people to get the opinion, whoever's listening, that you're this kind of somber person, Collin. You're very lively and very fun and very, even before we went live, we were having, just, I asked you to be yourself because you have no problem with that. And, and you gave the same response. I mean, you have some great rodeo stories. And one in particular that I love was Bobby Brown.
Oh yeah, Bobby Brown. That his nickname's Hooter, and Hooter. When I first started going pro on the Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association, going to pro rodeos, Bobby Brown was one of the top saddle bronc riders in the world. Traveled with Monty Hansen, who was world's champion saddle bronc rider. And Bobby was boisterous. He's just, he had this big wool coat, that he wore in the wintertime. And, when Bobby Brown entered the room, you knew that Bobby was there. And he was a tough, tough, tough guy. This guy, if you were in a dark alley, you'd want him on your side. You definitely would not want to be on the other end of it because I mean, guy's tough. I don't know how else to put it other and
And
I
you were
was
very intimidated by him.
oh, yeah, I was very intimidated by him. I just like,
Yeah.
"Ah." And I kinda walked careful around him. I didn't wanna upset him, and in 2015, I got the word that my oldest granddaughter it was actually in 2014 that we actually got the message that she only had 3 to 6 months to live, due to cancer. And I started a GoFundMe page, and then I put a link to that on my Facebook, and it was within a couple minutes after that link went live, I get a phone call, and it's Bobby. And he says, "What's going on, man?" He says, "Talk to me." And, I told him seconds after our phone call ended, I got the first donation from Bobby Brown. And I it was so touching. This guy that I'd been felt so intimidated about before was just this person who really cares about his friends, cares about others, and that was just so amazing. And something in my soul, I truly needed that right then, something like that in my life. And uh, it left me speechless. And wow, it was so powerful, very powerful.
And here we have a case where just hearing somebody's voice, you were in a bad place and he called out, and it just makes the biggest change. I have friends who have friends who, considered suicide, and just hearing from somebody and just, getting that, I've already made up my mind like you did. And, just hearing that word from somebody else, even if it's unexpected, just makes all the difference in the world because you
Yeah,
feel so alone, right?
yeah, it was. Say I lost my oldest daughter to cancer, and people say that the worst thing that a parent can experience in their life is a loss of a child. Well, I had time to prepare myself for my daughter's death. I
Right. You
spent the
got to
last
say
several
goodbye.
days of her life close to her. The last thing she said to me was to tell me that she loves me, and I watched her take her last breath. I I helped the mortuary that came to get her body. I helped load her body in into the hearse, and it was horrific. But the pain that I felt from my granddaughter's suicide was far greater.
Right.
It was far greater. She's this beautiful, wonderful, loving, amazing person. Most of the time she had a smile on her face. Just when she was 12 years old, my wife and I took her to Hawaii on vacation. We had this amazing time. And this child asked for only one thing the entire trip, and that's if we could take her to a store, and she showed us the money that she had to buy a swimming suit, and she just wanted to know if we'd take her to a store where she could buy a swimming suit. Well, once we got in the store, she was looking around. Grandpa started looking around and seeing things that she liked, so I pulled one off the rack. Says, "What about this one?" "Grandpa, that's too much." I says, "Well, do you have enough for it?" She says, "Yeah, I do." "Do you really want it?" "Okay, let's get this one." So we walk up to the counter together, and she's pulling out her money, and of course, right behind her, I'm getting out my credit card, and I slap it down. just knowing that she didn't ask was
Right.
huge.
Right.
And then I saw an advertisement for an attraction to swim with the dolphins. And so I asked her if she'd want to do that. She says, "Oh, Grandpa, that costs too much." And I says, "Well, don't worry about it." Says, "Would you like to do it?" "Grandpa, that's too much money." And she, kind of, we went back and forth on that for a little bit. And I finally says, "Honey, if it were absolutely totally free, would you want to do it?" "Well,
Mm.
yeah." I says, "Okay, then let's do it." And several months ago, I put this one of my favorite pictures of her with her in the water with the dolphin. Dolphin's head is right next to her head, and she has this huge, huge smile on her face. And I posted that as the banner on my Facebook page. And then another old rodeo friend made me feel something amazing. Don Gay, 8-time world champion bull rider. He he made a comment on there shortly after I posted it. And keep in mind, he's never, ever, ever met any of my family. And his comment was, "I'd know that smile anywhere."
Hmm.
And I had to text him, I says, "Donnie, you cannot even begin to imagine how much I needed, how much I needed words like that." Yeah, rodeo people are something else, I'll tell you what.
They are. You have a video of her on the website where you're in Hawaii and she's like doing kind of a hula type dance, and just the radiance from that young lady is so special.
Yeah, we'd been to our trip. We were on the island of Oahu on the North Shores where we stayed. And right next to the hotel we were at, there's the Polynesian Cultural Center. Have you ever heard of it?
Sure.
It's owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Ah.
And there's makeup villages from all of the Polynesian islands, Tonga and New Zealand, Tahiti, and on and on and on, Hawaii. And each little area is from a village from one of these different island nations, is showing their
Hmm.
culture, the foods they eat, the traditions that they do, the dances that they have. And we'd been there, and the first there was one of the villages we were at that somebody, one of the performers would came down out of the into the audience and asked her to come up on stage to do the dance with them, and she was looking terrified. We've got a picture of her where she just up on stage, and she just, she did not want to be there. The guy had to actually coax her, "Come on, it'll be, come on, come on." And she kept looking back to my wife and I, and she's, "Come on, Grandpa." And she went up there, and she was not happy. The end of the day, we did a private tour. There's when you go to the cultural center, there's different levels that you can pay. The one is just you go in, you roam around all on your own. Next one is you can get a group tour where you're with several other people you don't know that has a tour guide, or a private tour. And we did the private tour where we had a tour guide that was just for us. And our tour guide, Alohi, was this amazing, bubbly person. And I think she had a lot to do with getting my granddaughter to warm up to the things that were going on. But at the end of the day, on this tour, there was part of the tour was a luau. And then when it came to having people go up on stage to do the hula, she asked us if she could go up. She didn't
Wow.
have to be dragged up. And so we got another video of her. She's just up there having fun and smiling. And it just was just so incredible to see how she blossomed that day. And so then at the hotel that night, one of the best parts of that vacation is we had a suite, a 2-room suite, and so in one room there was a sofa with a hide bed in it, and that was her room. And then room for my wife and I. But at the end of each day that we were in Hawaii, she'd come running into our room, jump up on the bed on her belly, and just prop her head up and, just talk. And that was just that to my wife and I anyway, that was the best part of the trip.
Mm.
Spending that time with her, just one on one like that, 2-on-1. And my wife, this is our 17th, in September will be our 17th anniversary. But she married later in life. She was in her 40s when she and I got married. And so she'd never been married, never had children. Um, the mother of my granddaughters from my first marriage. But so this time with our granddaughter was so special to my sweetheart. She just adored that little girl too. So, and that was just
Does
amazing.
bringing up these memories and talking about it, does it help? Is that what you want people to do, to talk about the great things that happened with her?
It helps. I still have moments. Podcasting has been very therapeutic for me. I've been on, I can't even begin to guess how many shows I've been a guest on now, from uh, all around the world. And it is helpful. It's therapeutic for me. And my own podcast, it's doesn't have very many people yet following me, but
Okay.
the miracles of tragedy. I've had 3 big tragic moments in my life that through that tragedy, wonderful things developed.
Mm.
And that's where the title The Miracles of Tragedy comes. And so now I interview people who, all kinds of different tragedy. I had one lady who was a survivor of a horrific train crash in the UK, and then how she led the battle to have the government in the UK improve its safety of the government-owned rail system.
Wow.
Yeah, and a cancer survivor, and just the list goes on of all the amazing people I've had on there that does that.
Does it help
And
to know that you're in a tribe of others with similar happenstance?
uh, there's a group of people who are associated with aviation that have lost loved ones to suicide.
Mm.
And we have, video calls every now and then. One is a mother who lost her son. He was a private pilot working on his ratings to go on to be an airline pilot. And he let everybody know, it's going to be his last flight, texted people, and then he took off and he flew the airplane into the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. And so his mother is in this group. Then there's 2 other women whose husbands were pilots. And while they were home, ended their own life.
Mm.
And I'm currently working on some public speaking engagements where I'm going to go out to schools that have aviation programs and tell them there's a huge, huge, huge stigma in the aviation world. The FAA before 2011 did not allow antidepressants at all for pilots.
Hmm.
In 2008, I grounded myself to go on antidepressants. I was flying charter uh, with a small jet. I was doing charter work for a company out of Tulsa. Went on antidepressants in 2008, so I had to ground myself. If I would have gone into the medical examiner to renew my FAA physical, I would have had to record those medications on there,
Wow.
which would have instantly grounded me, or I could have lied and not put them on there, but
Hmm.
I wasn't going to do that. And so I just didn't report it, and I grounded myself. My wife says out of boredom, I got in my uniform and put a bag with eyes cut in the for my holes cut in my eyes in this bag, and I am the Prozac pilot. In 2011, when the FAA announced that they were going to allow 4 different types of antidepressants, CNN called me, Inside Edition called me. I don't know. I was getting slammed by media
Wow.
outlets. So I've been on CNN a few times. Inside Edition. It's either was it which one has the morning show called ABC This Morning or CBS This Morning? But been on that one and but then after the announcement, I took the easy route. I didn't go. Their process was at first it was you had to be on the medications for 1 year at the same dosage before you could apply, and then the FAA decides, okay, we're going to give you all these tests that cost the applicant thousands of dollars to do. After they evaluate the test, then they decide if they are going to give you a special issuance medical certificate. And part of that special issuance is you have to do these tests every year, thousands of dollars. But there was another road to go, is that I could just report. I could go to my doctor with a letter stating this is why I was depressed and why I was on antidepressants. And the doctor works with me for 90 days to go off of the medications. At the end of those 90 days, if the doctor feels that everything is good, he'll write that letter. And all I had to do is walk into my designated pilot examiner with the letter, and he issues me the medical certificate. And so that's the route I took. And then started doing a little bit of instruction. Then finally in 2013, got a job with regional airline and was ready to upgrade to captain into the Embraer 175. I got the bid and got the bid approved to upgrade in December and had a class date of 2014. I had a class date of January 2015, and the death of my daughter happened. And so I pushed that off, and here I was faced with the decision. Here I am in this depth of sorrow, and I could try antidepressants or not, but I just that would have meant that would have just been a huge break, and I wanted to fly. So I just pushed back the upgrade time so I didn't have to focus, on trying to learn a whole new airplane and getting the responsibilities of captain. Then and finally bid the upgrade again in October and got my check ride done in December in the simulator and started the operating experience with a check airman captain in the right seat. You have to do 25 hours of with that to make the qualifications, and bingo, bango, bingo. Then I'm officially the captain once they sign you off. So, but pushing that off. So there's a lot of times in my career that I've had to push aside the thing that I love doing.
Yeah, I'm also a private pilot.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very familiar with some of those. Although I pushed it away for quite a while. Do you think that, um, the antidepressants and these drugs like that, are there? I know again you're not a doctor, but are there any links to? I hear sometimes that some of them actually side effects is suicidal tendencies, suicidal thoughts. I wonder what the statistics are on that.
Well, I can tell you, um, in I'll back up to go into how I got to where I am right now with medications. My last flight, I think it was January 22nd of 2020, had an overnight in Guadalajara, Mexico. Worked the first flight out into Houston, where I was based. I was based in Houston. Worked the first flight from Guadalajara into Houston that next morning. And I always bid my trips to where where, I could hopefully end early enough in the day and then be home in Vegas early in the day. So I could, like an extra day off almost.
Sure.
And so I'd get home, but I was home in Vegas by about 10 o'clock that morning. And about the second day home, Montezuma's Revenge kicked in hard. And I
Ooh.
had not drank the water, but I don't know why else I was having those issues.
Sure.
And after several days, my wife took me to the emergency room, and in a CT scan that was done, doctors found a tumor on my left kidney. And of course, now with that, I'm grounded in a way, very luckily, because
Mm.
my surgery was February 20th of 2020, which was the fifth anniversary of my daughter's funeral, but also when COVID was really starting to come to the forefront of the news. But here I am grounded, again for something else, for this medical reason.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure how long, before I could go back to work. And all of a sudden, it's just like, flying was kind of like an antidepressant to me to begin with. That really kept me going. I just fly. Oh yeah.
It's great
Oh
up
oh
there.
oh
Yeah.
oh yeah. Oh 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 yeah. But so I didn't have that. And I was starting to feel just like, oh, woe,
Mm.
woe,
Mm.
woe is me. And my wife and I talked it over and made the decision for me to go on antidepressants. And now I don't have thoughts like that. Not
Mm.
at all. I mean, I'd turn 66 this month. And a lot of people
Wow.
say,
Yeah.
man, you're getting up there, man. What do you got
You look
left in
great.
life? I mean, if I live to be 150, they're gonna have to pull me out of this life kicking and screaming because I think I've got more to live for yet. And so that's part of working with a doctor when it comes to antidepressants. You having those,
Mm.
you just tell your doctor, okay, let's adjust the meds then. Let's try this, let's try that. And that's one of the things that it's such a horrific process, for pilots to get on. You got to get stable on them first, obviously. But the FAA does not make it easy.
Mm.
And I mean, would you rather have it's depression is no different than any other type of ailment. It is
Mm.
a physical disease. It truly is. And would you have a pilot up there that's suffering from something else and not being taken care of? So why not have a pilot up there who's medicated? Because pilots are people too.
Right.
And overall, they say, like 10 to 15% of the people in the United States are on antidepressants, and that number's growing.
Mm.
And so it just goes to say that pilots have struggle with depression as well. And for them but they're not going to report it.
Right.
They're not going to report it. They'll go on unmedicated because if they report it, they're afraid of losing their jobs.
Right.
When the young man in North Dakota ended his life, his roommate was just having a horrible time. And his father is a airline pilot with one of the major airlines. And he called his father and they were talking and he said that told him, how hard it was for him losing his friend like that he was thinking of getting counseling. His dad says, don't do that. You could lose your medical.
Mm.
Because even with seeing a therapist When you go in to get your FAA physical, you know the list of questions they ask.
Sure.
That's one of them that's on there. Have you ever suffered from depression? Or list your medical visits. You have to report a visit to a therapist, even though there's no medical treatment going on there. You have to put that down. And these kids are terrified that if they do that, the FAA is going to take a look at them.
Hmm.
And so they'll go untreated, even without therapy when they need it. And so that's the message. I put the PowerPoint together that I talk about the 5 attitudes, dangerous attitudes that the FAA states, you know, macho, invulnerability, and the others. And I'm going to hammer on macho. But so I'm going to put up an image of the FAA physical, and then I'm going to have it come out where it draws a red circle around. Have you ever suffered from depression? Then I'm going to have the red check mark come out. It says, how many of you ever done that? We'll talk about it a little bit. Then the next one is a copy of one of my FAA physicals with the box checked. Say, see? And here I am. I finished out my career checking that box every 6 months.
Incredible. So, Colin, on the podcast, I always bring up the story how I started my business back in the '90s. I ended up working way too much. I gained a lot of weight, and the doctor said to me, "If you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate." I got up to 340 pounds, so I, completely turned everything around. I lost 130 pounds in about a year and a
Mm-hmm.
half. People always ask me how. And I just say one word: discipline, like it's some secret. Just discipline is the way I did it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
Oh, it when I'm up and feeling good, I'm I'm disciplined. It's like for a while, when the meds aren't working just right, I'll just sit there and watch Netflix or something all day. But
Mm,
more recently, it's been like I'll I start my morning off with breakfast, watching talk from one of the leaders of the church. We call it General Conference twice a year, and I'll the president or one of the quorum of the 12, 12 apostles, we believe, and the president we believe to be a prophet, just like Moses, Isaiah, and so forth. I'll watch one of their talks, and then I'll read some scripture. And then afterwards, you'll think, no, I'll watch some Blue Bloods. No, no, you're not going to watch Blue Bloods, Colin. You go in there and you get some busy work done. You go into that booth and you record some auditions.
hmm.
And recently, though, I came across something that really, really, really has my spirits up. I did some research on emotional support animals. And every you can go anywhere in the world and get a little certificate that says your puppy, your peacock, your small pony or whatever is an emotional support animal. But there's actually a psychiatric service dog that's actually a service dog. And the difference between the two is a service dog actually performs functions, um, does something for their handlers. Like one thing, a lot of return military vets with PTSD will have night terrors. They can be up around, doing whatever, sleeping, and that dog will wake them up and stop the night terrors. Or can remind you to take medications. If you're feeling dizzy from medications, whatever can help steady you. There's a whole list of things these animals can do. And in my studies on the psychiatric service dogs, I found out that of all the people that use these wonderful animals, 82% of the people with psychiatric service dogs reported a reduction in suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
1/3 of the people, after having these animals for 18 months, no longer met any of the criteria at all. Not one piece of criteria for PTSD.
Hmm.
and 92% of them reported a reduction in medications.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was thinking, okay, I'll just train if I had a dog, I can get it trained. So I found a place that does training for that. And I says, okay, now I just got to get a dog, looking at dog prices, and found a place that trains them. It's Dog Training Elite. So I contacted them, told them about myself and what I was doing. Says, oh, you need to talk to the CEO and the founder of the Malinois Foundation. And the Malinois Foundation in Utah trains and donates these service dogs to veterans, first responders, women who suffer from, women survivors, and special needs children. And I have become a spokesperson for them, and I'm just so excited about that.
Wow.
That these animals are just incredible. They are looking for a pup to have trained for me right now, as I sometimes have these nightmares that from some childhood abuse, and the dog could wake me up from that. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so I'm so excited about all the good that this foundation does. It's just amazing. And they're all off at donations. And the Malinois Foundation, they work off of donations. There's also on their website a place where if people could benefit from having one of these animals, they could put in a request, an application to see if they qualify to become a recipient of a psychiatric service dog. And they do miracles. They do
Hmm.
miracles for their handlers. It's amazing.
It's fascinating to me how you kind of equate discipline with kind of regiment and routine. You're falling off a bit and you want to kind of get back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you always been that way?
Oh, I had to learn it. I really did.
Hmm.
Because you mentioned exercising, I've never been one to be very good at exercising.
Hmm. But you're a
And
rodeo. You were in the rodeo. You
oh,
were in
I
shape.
know it. When I rode bulls, I was 6 foot tall and 145, 150 pounds.
Wow.
I was this gangly kid.
Yeah, you're gangly.
And I one year I went up into the Northeast a lot, New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, went to a bunch of rodeos up there and did pretty good. And came back the next year going up there, and I don't even know how the topic came up, but somebody said I was just kind of nonchalant about how I was doing it. I kind of getting a big head on myself up there.
Hmm.
One of the stuff, one it's so cool with pro rodeos, especially when I first started in pro rodeo. I remember my first bigger one that I went to, where I went to as a permit holder. When you rodeo, it's PRCA, you get what's called a permit, and you can't enter any rodeo on a permit. They have to be allowed by. You have to be a full member to compete at the really big ones, and at some of the ones that are not really big but bigger than the littler ones, they may or may not take permits. But I remember the first one that was paid a little more, that called permits max. If they had enough card holders enter, permit holders weren't going to get in. So, but I got into this one. It was St. Paul, Minneapolis, at the Minnesota State Fair, and I went into the rodeo office and I was looking down the list and I'm like, oh man, Jerome Robinson, many times the National Finals Rodeo. Marvin Paul Shoulders, son of Jim Shoulders, National Finals Bull Rider. These guys are here. I'm like, wow.
Hmm.
and But I'll never forget when went up in the Northeast of those rodeos there after had been to several rodeos there. I'd see some guys come up. My nickname was Goose back then. They'd walk up and they see the entry list. Oh man, Goose is here. There's first place right there, guys.
Wow.
And so I started to get a big head. And this guy that went to a lot of rodeos as a steer wrestler, he had some money behind him. He says, "Man, you need to improve your attitude and be a little bit more disciplined about this. I was thinking about sponsoring you this year." I'm like,
Interesting.
really? But you know what I did? That next day I started running.
Mm,
Okay, now I got some motivation. I think it was too little too late, though.
that's amazing how it comes up like that. Uh, so, Colin Goose Hughes, what motivates you?
Nowadays, just living life,
Yeah.
enjoying life, having joy in my life. It's the last few years, since COVID, have been a true blessing for my wife and I. Now that I'm feeling the way that I need to in life, it's the first time that I've found true happiness and joy in life. And so to me, it's just enjoying life and knowing that, hope and love do exist in this world. They truly do exist. My big message to people who, are feeling like there is not hope or there is not love in the world is, and especially youth, people are so worried about youth these days and
Yeah.
suicide, and rightly so. You just hear about it so much more. And I grew up in a home where I didn't feel loved. And I know that feeling. And if you can't get love at home or feel that you can't, go somewhere where you can. Don't go, down with a member of your football team or your friends
Hmm.
at school says, "Yeah, mom, yeah, that's tough, man. Oh, you're thinking about killing yourself? Oh, hey, if you yeah, okay, yeah, I could see why you'd want to do that." No, no, go somewhere where there's somebody who's just not gonna, agree with you. Go somewhere, walk down the street, go to a church, synagogue, a mosque, go to a youth center, uh, someplace where there's someone there, a counselor at school, somewhere who's going to give you positive feedback and guidance. Because I'm here to tell you that love and hope do exist in this world.
Hmm.
It took me over 60 years to truly find it, except when I was up at the controls of an airplane. Oh, 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 oh. Or when I was riding a bull. But what I discovered in life is, I had the attitude when I rode bulls is, I'm a bull rider. You know why I ride bulls? Chicks dig bull riders.
Mhm. Really?
Or I'm a pilot. That was my identity. But the things that we do in life, whether it be football player, singer, drummer, mountain climber, whatever it is, homemaker, that's that's not what defines who we are. It's just things that we do. The things that define who we are is how we live our lives in a positive manner. That defines us. We're a sibling to someone possibly. We're a son, we're a father, mother, child, all these things, and grandfather, and all these things, that you work for to look at the things that are really important in life. Was bull riding important for me to do? No. Did I enjoy it? Oh, yeah. Was flying a jet important for me to do? No. I loved doing it, but it did not define me.
Hmm. So, how do you measure success?
Measure success by the joy you feel in your heart,
Hmm.
the goodness that you do in the world. And it doesn't have to be a huge impact. It just sometimes walking down a street and saying hello with a big smile on your face can totally turn somebody's life around. You'll never know it, but it truly can. Just being good to others. being kind. I don't care if you have, today we hear about all the anger that goes on between people of different groups.
Mm,
And I say this, if when it comes to politics, Democrats and Republicans, the people on the far left and the people on the far right, you can't tell them a thing. And then even now, though, that's coming, closer to the center, where if you disagree with somebody, they hate you. And um, to me, success is being able to treat others that you disagree with in a kind, loving manner. You disagree. Okay, so what? Let's have a good conversation about it and keep it civil.
right.
That's cool. I mean, the growth that you get from that is amazing.
It certainly is. Well, Colin Hughes, thank you so much for your time today. I was so excited when you accepted this. It's a subject that we need to talk about more. It's a subject that we need to understand how to cope with and how to better deal with to help others. And if you can help just one person turn around, those kinds of thoughts. I mean, it's how great that one person in your church must have felt when they, talked you off the ledge. I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I thank you so much for your time. How can we get in touch with you? You mentioned your podcast,
Yeah, the Miracles of Tragedy, it's on, any of the major outlets. And
also
there's
your
some,
website. Sorry.
uh, yeah, there's not a link to the podcast on there, but I put up two websites, about suicide, stopping suicide. When I first, I first looked, for stopsuicide.com, stopteensuicide.com. Both of those were taken, or .org, both those taken, and a drop down box of all the different extensions. And one extension that popped out that was available for both was .life. And so I've got both those, stopteensuicide.life, stopsuicide.life. It's got the essay that you read a little bit about at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then there's the video of my granddaughter, the video of me on one page, and there's a page with several links to different organizations. And one of them, of course, is a number that I always need to talk about, 988. It used to be there was a long toll-free number for people in crisis, but now if you're in crisis, all you got to do is text or dial 988, and volunteers are waiting there on standby to talk with you. And did I say that number is 988? That's the number, 988. And so there's a link to that on there, and you can find out more about 988 services. And just contact page. I made one email says grandpa at stopsuicide.life.
Good for you.
So
Well, your light shines bright, Colin, and I love your energy, and I love many people will just kind of go in a cave after something like this happened, but you, a remarkable individual, has decided to turn it around and talk about it and talk to others in similar circumstances and come on podcasts and make your own podcast and put up websites, and that's the trait of a remarkable person. Try not to let this happen to anyone again, and hopefully we can do that. I thank you so much for your time. I look forward to one day seeing you up on stage and making us all smile.
and remember the Malinois Foundation, the
Malinois.
malinoisfoundation.org. Malinois, Malinois.
Very good. Thank you again, Colin. You be well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the Video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciplined Conversations.